The sun was beginning to set, casting a warm golden light across the town. A young boy was walking home from school, carrying a heavy bag filled with books and homework he hadn't yet finished. His feet kicked up dust as he walked along the narrow path that led through the park. It was a small town, and the park wasn't much more than a patch of green with a few trees and a small lake in the middle. Most people didn't pay much attention to it, but it was his usual shortcut home. The boy, like many others in his neighborhood, didn't have much. His family lived in a small, run-down house on the edge of town. His parents worked hard, but money was always tight. He often had to make do with old clothes and shoes that didn't fit quite right. Still, he never complained. He had learned to make the best of what he had, and he didn't mind doing things for himself. As he neared the lake, he noticed something unusual. There was a crowd gathered near the water. People were shouting and pointing, and some of them were waving their arms. Curiosity got the better of him, and he approached the crowd, wondering what was going on. When he got closer, he saw a girl struggling in the water. She was flailing her arms, trying to keep her head above the surface. Her clothes were wet and heavy, clinging to her body as she fought against the current. The boy's heart raced as he realized she was in serious trouble. She was sinking, unable to keep herself afloat. Without thinking, he rushed toward the edge of the water. His heart pounded in his chest as he looked around, but no one seemed to be doing anything. People were shouting, but no one was jumping in to help. It was as if they were all waiting for someone else to act. The boy didn't hesitate. He knew he had to do something. Without wasting another second, he pulled off his shoes, rolled up his sleeves, and dove into the lake. The water was colder than he expected, and it took his breath away for a moment. But he pushed through the shock, his instincts guiding him. He swam quickly toward the girl, who was now barely visible, her head just above the water. Her eyes were wide with fear, and she looked like she was losing hope. He reached her just in time, grabbing hold of her arm and pulling her toward the shore. She struggled at first, but he managed to calm her down, telling her to hold on. With every stroke, the shore seemed further away. But he wasn't going to give up. His muscles burned as he fought against the current, but he pushed forward. After what felt like an eternity, the boy finally managed to pull the girl to safety. He dragged her up onto the muddy shore, his breath coming in heavy gasps. She was coughing and sputtering, but she was alive. That was all that mattered. The girl sat there for a moment, still dazed from the ordeal. The boy stood nearby, catching his breath, unsure of what to do next. He had just saved her life, but the whole situation felt surreal. He had never done anything like that before. It was hard to believe he had actually pulled her out of the water. The girl finally looked up at him, her eyes wide with gratitude. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice shaking. The boy nodded, not knowing what to say. "It's okay," he muttered, his voice barely above a whisper. He wasn't looking for thanks. He had just done what he felt was right. The crowd that had gathered began to disperse, some people walking away while others stayed behind to offer words of encouragement. But the boy barely noticed. His mind was racing, still trying to process what had just happened. The girl, still wet and shivering, stood up and looked at him. She seemed hesitant, as if she wanted to say something but didn't know how. Finally, she spoke. "Are you okay?" she asked, her eyes scanning him for any signs of injury. The boy shook his head. "I'm fine," he said, though his body ached from the effort. He was more concerned about her than himself. For a moment, the two of them stood there in silence, both unsure of what to do next. The park was now quiet, the evening air cooling as the sun sank lower in the sky. The girl finally took a deep breath, straightening her shoulders. "I should go home," she said, her voice still soft but steady. "But thank you. Really, thank you." The boy gave a small nod. "You're welcome," he said simply, though the words didn't feel like enough. He wanted to tell her that it was no big deal, that anyone would have done the same. But he didn't. There was something in the way she looked at him that made him feel like he had done something important. The girl turned to walk away, but before she could take more than a few steps, she stopped and glanced back at him. "What's your name?" she asked, as if she had just remembered. The boy hesitated for a moment before answering. I don't have much of a name," he said, his voice quiet. He was used to being just another kid in the neighborhood, someone who wasn't really noticed by most people. The girl raised an eyebrow, clearly confused. "Everyone has a name," she said, almost laughing at his response. He shrugged. "It's not important," he said, his gaze dropping to the ground. He didn't want to make a big deal out of it. The girl stood there for a moment, thinking. Then she spoke again, her voice soft. "Well, I'm glad you were there today," she said, her eyes meeting his. "You saved my life." The boy didn't know what to say to that. He just nodded, a little embarrassed. With one last glance, the girl turned and walked away, disappearing into the distance. The boy watched her go, his mind still spinning. He had never expected his day to turn out like this. He was just trying to get home, but now everything had changed. As he started walking back toward his own home, he couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted. Something had changed in him. The world felt a little different now. He wasn't just the boy from the poor side of town anymore. He had done something. He had saved someone's life. It was a feeling he would never forget. The next morning, the boy woke up with a strange feeling. It wasn't the usual feeling of dread that came with the thought of another day at school. No, today was different. Today, he couldn't stop thinking about the girl he had saved the day before. Her face was burned into his memory, her eyes wide with fear as she struggled in the water. He wondered if she was all right now, if she had gone home and told her family about the crazy thing that had happened. He quickly got dressed, grabbed his school bag, and headed out the door. The walk to school was quiet as usual. Most of the streets were still sleepy at this hour, and the only sounds were the chirping of birds and the occasional passing car. But today even the birds seemed quieter. The boy's mind was elsewhere, replaying the events of the previous day over and over. He couldn't help but wonder what had happened to the girl after he left her by the shore. The school day passed slowly. His classes dragged on, and the boy found it hard to concentrate. He kept thinking about the girl, imagining what her life must be like. She was so different from him. She looked like she came from a world of wealth and comfort, a world where things like drowning in a park lake didn't happen. How had she ended up in the water in the first place? Was she alone? Did she panic? These thoughts kept running through his mind. When the bell rang, signaling the end of the school day, the boy packed up his things and walked home. He had planned to take his usual shortcut through the park, but today, something pulled him in the opposite direction. He felt like he needed to see if the girl was okay. Maybe she would be at the park again. Maybe they would run into each other. He wasn't sure why he felt such a pull, but it was strong. He decided to follow his gut. He walked slowly toward the park, hoping he wouldn't find it empty. As he approached the familiar path, he could see a group of people gathered near the lake. His heart raced for a moment. Was something happening again? But as he got closer, he realized it wasn't an emergency. The people weren't panicking. Instead, there was one person who stood out to him. It was the girl. She was sitting on a bench near the water, her clothes dry now, but she was still looking a little shaken. The boy hesitated, unsure if he should approach her. After all, they were practically strangers. She had thanked him yesterday, but that was it. He wasn't sure what he was supposed to do now. He stood a little further away, watching her for a while. She seemed lost in thought, staring at the water. Her eyes looked distant, like she was thinking about something deep. He wondered if she was thinking about him, about the moment he saved her life. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the girl stood up and began walking toward him. Her steps were slow, deliberate. The boy's heart skipped a beat. She was coming toward him. Did she want to thank him again? Or maybe she was just going to walk past as if yesterday had never happened. But to his surprise, she stopped in front of him. There was a brief moment of silence, neither of them sure of what to say. The boy shifted his weight from one foot to the other, trying to figure out what was going on. "Hi," she said softly, her voice a little quieter than he remembered. She seemed unsure, as if she wasn't sure how to start the conversation. "I've been looking for you." The boy blinked, surprised. "Looking for me?" She nodded. "I wanted to thank you properly for what you did yesterday. I know I said it then, but I don't think it was enough. What you did, it wasn't just brave. It was life-changing for me." The boy didn't know how to respond to that. He wasn't used to hearing such words. I didn't do anything special," he muttered, feeling awkward. "I just did what anyone would do." She shook her head, her gaze firm. "No, not everyone would have done that. You didn't think twice. You just jumped in and saved me. You didn't hesitate. That's something most people don't do. And for that I owe you more than just a thank you." The boy didn't know what to say. The words didn't quite make sense to him. He wasn't looking for anything in return. He didn't want to make a big deal of it. But the girl seemed serious, like she really meant what she was saying. I didn't do it for anything in return," he said slowly, trying to explain. I couldn't let you drown. I know, she replied, smiling faintly, and that's what makes you different. You didn't think about anything else, just me. And that's why I can't just walk away and pretend like nothing happened. The boy shifted uncomfortably. He didn't know how to respond to that. He wasn't used to receiving gratitude like this. He wasn't used to people looking at him with such respect. It made him feel strange, like he didn't deserve it. After a long pause, the girl spoke again, her voice soft but serious. I wanted to help you too. The boy frowned. What do you mean? I know it's a lot to ask, but I talked to my parents. I don't know how to explain this, but I think you deserve more than this life you have. You deserve a chance to do something with your future, and I want to help with that. The boy stared at her, completely taken aback. What are you talking about? She smiled, though it was a little uncertain. I know you don't come from the same kind of world I do, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't have the same opportunities. I want to help you with your education. I want to make sure you have a chance at something better. You deserve that. You've shown me what it means to be brave and selfless. It's the least I can do. The boy felt a rush of emotions, but they were all mixed up. He was overwhelmed, confused, and honestly a little embarrassed. He didn't know how to respond. I don't know if I can accept that, he said slowly, unsure. It feels wrong. I'm just a regular kid, she shook her head. You're not just a regular kid. You're someone who saved my life. You're someone who has potential. I see that. The boy didn't know what to say. This was all so strange. It felt like a dream. How could someone like her want to help someone like him? I don't know, he said softly. I'm not used to this. I understand, she said. But think about it. Think about what this could mean for you. You don't have to stay stuck in the same place your whole life. There's so much more waiting for you. The boy was silent for a long moment, his mind racing. Could he really accept help from someone like her? Was he ready to step into a world that felt so far away from everything he knew? I'll think about it, he said finally, his voice low. But I don't want to take advantage of you. She smiled again, her eyes warm. You're not taking advantage of me. You're giving yourself a chance. Don't let fear stop you. With those words, she turned and walked away, leaving the boy standing there, his mind spinning. He didn't know what to think. His life had just changed in ways he hadn't imagined. He had saved a life, and now someone wanted to change his life. It was almost too much to process, but deep down a small part of him felt something new, something he hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. The next few days felt like a blur. The boy tried his best to focus on school, but his mind kept drifting back to the conversation he had with the girl. Her words kept echoing in his head. You deserve more than this life you have. You deserve a chance to do something with your future. He couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted in him. He wasn't used to people believing in him. Most people in his life had always treated him like he was invisible, like he was just another kid from a poor family, someone who wasn't meant to achieve much. But the girl, she saw something different in him. She saw potential. It was strange, but in some way it made him feel like he could actually change his life. He had always dreamed of something more, of escaping the small town he grew up in, of doing something with his life that meant something, but it always felt out of reach, like a dream too far away to touch. Now, though, with her offer on the table, the dream didn't feel so impossible. But the boy still wasn't sure. He wasn't sure he was worthy of her help, or even if he should accept it. It felt wrong somehow, like he would be taking advantage of her kindness. And what would people think? People in the town weren't used to seeing someone like him getting help from someone like her. But as the days passed, the thought of a different life started to take root in his mind. He imagined what it would be like to study in a school where he didn't have to worry about his next meal, or about not having the right clothes. What if he could get an education, go to college, and make something of himself? It felt so far away, but now it felt possible. One afternoon, as he was walking home from school, he found himself heading toward the park again. He didn't know why, but he just felt drawn to that place, to the spot where he had saved the girl. As he walked through the familiar path, he spotted her sitting on the same bench by the lake. She was alone, her gaze fixed on the water. She seemed deep in thought, just like before. The boy paused for a moment, unsure if he should approach her. But something inside him pushed him forward. He wanted to thank her, to tell her that he had been thinking about what she said. He wanted to explain that he wasn't sure about accepting her help, but that he appreciated it more than words could say. He walked up to her slowly, his footsteps light on the grass. When she noticed him, she looked up, a small smile crossing her face. "Hi," she said, her voice soft but warm. "Hey," he replied, feeling a little nervous. "I've been thinking a lot about what you said." She tilted her head slightly, waiting for him to continue. "I don't know if I can accept your offer," he said, his voice a little shaky. "I've never had anyone believe in me like that before. I don't want to take advantage of you." The girl's smile didn't fade. Instead, she looked at him with understanding in her eyes. "I get it. I know it's a big ask, but I wouldn't offer it if I didn't think you deserved it." He looked down at his shoes, unsure of what to say. "It's just, everything feels so different. I don't know if I'm ready for something like that. I've never had anything handed to me. Everything I have, I had to work for." "I know," she said softly. "I know your life hasn't been easy, but sometimes we need help to get to the next step. I think you're ready. You just need someone to believe in you." The boy looked up at her, her words sinking in. "You really think I can do it?" "I do," she said, her voice firm but kind. "I've seen you. You're not like the others. You don't take things for granted. You've already done something most people would never do. You saved a life. Don't you think you deserve a chance to do something more?" He was quiet for a long moment, his thoughts swirling. It was hard to believe that someone who had everything could see something in him that he had never seen in himself. But the way she spoke, there was no doubt in her voice. She believed in him, and maybe, just maybe, it was time to start believing in himself too. "I don't know," he said finally, still unsure, "but maybe I'll think about it more. I don't want to let you down." "You won't let me down," she said gently. "I'm not asking for anything in return. I just want to see you succeed. I want to see you have the chance to become more than what you think you can be." He stood there for a moment, taking in her words. He had always been so focused on survival, on getting by, that he had never thought about what it would be like to actually thrive. What would it be like to walk into a room and not feel like everyone was looking down on him? What would it be like to have a future that wasn't dictated by where he came from? "Okay," he said, the words feeling strange as they left his mouth. "I'll give it a try. I'll take that chance." The girl's face lit up with a smile, and for the first time in a long time, the boy felt a sense of hope that he had never felt before. Maybe this was the beginning of something new. Maybe this was the moment when everything started to change. She stood up, brushing the grass from her pants. "I'll talk to my parents and we'll get everything set up. I know it's a big step, but I'm sure you'll do great. You just need to take the first step and the rest will follow." The boy nodded, still processing everything. It felt unreal, like he was stepping into a world that wasn't meant for him. But for the first time in his life, he was excited about the future. As they stood there by the lake, the girl gave him one last smile before walking away. The boy watched her go, feeling something he hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. He had never been good at asking for help. He had always been the one who took care of things on his own, who did whatever it took to survive. But now someone else was offering to help him, to give him the chance he had always dreamed of. It was up to him to take it. As he walked home that afternoon, he felt a weight lift off his shoulders. For the first time, he didn't feel like he was carrying the world on his back. He had a chance, and that chance was more than he ever thought he would get. He didn't know what the future held, but for the first time, he felt like he had the power to shape it. The following weeks passed in a blur of new experiences and challenges. The boy had made the decision to take the chance the girl had offered, and in doing so, his life began to change in ways he never could have imagined. He felt nervous at first, unsure of what was ahead, but as each day passed, he began to feel a shift in himself. It wasn't easy, and there were moments when he questioned his decision, but deep down he knew it was the right path. The girl's family had wasted no time. They immediately reached out to a local school that specialized in helping students from disadvantaged backgrounds. It wasn't the most prestigious school in the city, but it was a place where the boy could finally get an education that wasn't limited by his circumstances. He was enrolled in classes, given access to books and materials he had never had before, and for the first time, he felt like he had a real opportunity to learn. At first, the boy struggled. The school was different from what he was used to. The students there came from all walks of life, but they all had one thing in common. They had resources, things he had never had. They were able to focus on their studies without worrying about how they would get their next meal or if their parents could afford their books. He felt out of place, as if he didn't belong. His classmates seemed confident, speaking about vacations, new clothes, and expensive gadgets like they were everyday things. The boy tried to blend in, but it was hard. He felt like an outsider, and the feeling only grew stronger as the days went by. He missed the familiarity of his old school, even though he knew it wasn't the place where he could make something of himself. But then, something unexpected happened. The girl, the one who had given him this chance, became his ally. She noticed how uncomfortable he was, how withdrawn he had become. One afternoon after class, she approached him in the hallway. Her expression was warm but serious. "Hey," she said, her voice soft. "I can tell something's been bothering you. How's everything going?" The boy hesitated. He had never been good at talking about his feelings. It wasn't something he did. He had always dealt with everything on his own, quietly pushing through. But with her, it felt different. He felt like she actually cared. It's not easy," he said, his voice low. "I don't belong here. Everyone's different. They talk about things I don't even know about, like I'm from another world." She nodded, her eyes understanding. "I get it. It's a big change. But you're here for a reason. You deserve to be here just as much as anyone else." He looked at her, his heart pounding in his chest. "But I don't fit in. I'm not like them." "You don't have to be like them," she said firmly. "Just be yourself. You have something they don't have." "You've already proven that." The boy frowned, confused. "What do you mean?" "You're not afraid to work hard. You've already done something most people wouldn't even dream of. You saved my life. You didn't hesitate. That's something special." Her words hit him harder than he expected. He had never thought of it that way. To him, it had just been an instinct, something anyone would do if they saw someone in trouble. But hearing it from her made him see himself in a new light. Maybe he was capable of more than he thought. She smiled at him, a reassuring, kind smile. "You don't have to be like anyone else. You just need to focus on what you're here for. You're here to learn. Don't let the rest of it distract you." The boy nodded slowly, feeling a sense of relief. For the first time, someone had made him feel like he belonged, even if just for a moment. From that day forward, he decided to try harder. He focused on his studies, pushing through the awkwardness and the doubts that lingered in the back of his mind. He started asking questions, participating more in class, and even made a few friends who didn't care about what he didn't have. They cared about who he was, and that was enough. But it wasn't just his classmates who were making a difference. The girl continued to support him, not just with words, but with actions. She invited him to study together, shared her notes, and helped him when he didn't understand something. She didn't treat him like a charity case, and that meant everything to him. It made him feel like he was earning his place, like he was part of something bigger than just his past. The more time he spent at school, the more confident he became. He realized that his struggles had made him stronger, not weaker. He had learned how to survive when things were tough, how to keep going when everything seemed impossible. Those lessons were more valuable than anything he could learn from a textbook. And now, in this new environment, he was using those lessons to thrive. As the weeks went by, the boy's grades improved, and so did his attitude. He wasn't just going through the motions anymore. He was fully engaged. His teachers began to notice, and even though he still had a long way to go, they saw the potential in him. They encouraged him to keep pushing forward, to keep striving for more. But even with all the progress, there were still days when the boy felt like he didn't belong. Some of the other students still looked at him like he was out of place. They didn't understand why someone like him would be in their school, and sometimes it was hard for him to ignore the whispers and sideways glances. But he kept his head down, focused on his work, and reminded himself of why he was there, not to fit in, but to learn and to change his life. One afternoon, after a particularly difficult exam, the boy sat alone in the schoolyard, feeling exhausted. The test had been harder than he expected, and even though he had studied, he wasn't sure if he had done well. His mind raced, wondering if he had failed, if he was really cut out for this. But then he heard footsteps approaching. He looked up to see the girl walking toward him, her usual warm smile on her face. "How did it go?" she asked, sitting down next to him. "I don't know," he said, rubbing his forehead. "It was harder than I thought." "I'm not sure I did well," she chuckled softly. "I'm sure you did better than you think. You've been working hard, and that counts for a lot." He sighed. I just don't want to disappoint anyone. I don't want to let you down." "You won't disappoint anyone," she said firmly. "You're doing more than most people ever would. You're putting in the effort, and that's what matters." The boy looked at her, feeling a sense of gratitude wash over him. She had no idea how much her words meant. She was right. He was doing his best, and that was enough. "You're right," he said with a small smile. "I'll keep going. I won't give up." She smiled back, her eyes sparkling with encouragement. "That's the spirit." As they sat there together, the boy realized something important. He didn't have to be perfect. He didn't have to fit into anyone else's mold. He just had to keep moving forward step by step toward the future he was building for himself. And with her by his side, offering support when he needed it, he knew he wasn't alone on this journey. For the first time in his life, he felt like he truly had a chance. The months that followed felt like a whirlwind. The boy had come a long way since that day at the lake. He had worked harder than ever, putting his heart into everything he did, and it was beginning to show. His grades had improved, and he had made real friends at his new school. Friends who didn't care about his background or where he came from. They respected him for who he was, and that made all the difference. One evening, as he sat in his small room, studying for another exam, he thought back to where he had started. Not long ago, he had been unsure of himself, unsure of his place in the world. Now he was working toward something bigger, something he had once thought was out of reach. It wasn't just about getting through the day anymore. He had goals. He had dreams. It wasn't always easy, though. There were still times when he felt out of place. Despite everything, there were still whispers, still looks that made him feel like he didn't belong. But those moments were fewer now. He had learned to ignore them, to focus on what really mattered, his education and his future. And when those doubts crept in, the girl's words echoed in his mind. "You're here for a reason. You deserve to be here just as much as anyone else." The girl had become more than just someone who had helped him. She had become his closest friend, someone who believed in him when no one else did. She had been by his side from the beginning, encouraging him when he wanted to quit and reminding him of his potential. She had become a constant source of strength, someone he could always turn to. One afternoon after school, the boy met her outside the school gates. She was waiting for him, a smile on her face as usual. As he walked up to her, she handed him a small envelope. "What's this?" he asked, looking at the envelope curiously. "Open it," she said, her eyes sparkling with excitement. He ripped open the envelope and pulled out a letter. As he read it, his heart skipped a beat. The letter was from a prestigious university, offering him a scholarship. His mind raced as he read the words over and over, barely able to comprehend what he was seeing. A scholarship, a full scholarship to attend one of the best universities in the country. It felt unreal. Is this real?" he asked, his voice shaking slightly. "It's real," she said, her smile widening. "I spoke to my parents about it. They know how hard you've worked and they believe in you. They think you deserve a chance at something bigger. This scholarship is just the beginning." He looked up at her, speechless. For a moment, everything seemed to blur, the weight of the moment pressing down on him. He had never imagined that something like this could happen to him. He had always felt like he was stuck, like his life was limited by where he came from. But now this was his chance, a chance to change everything. "Thank you," he said finally, his voice filled with gratitude. "I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything," she replied. "You've already done more than enough. This is just the next step." The boy stood there, the letter in his hand, still trying to wrap his head around the fact that his life had just changed. He had worked so hard, but he had never expected anything like this. It felt like a dream, but it was real. The girl smiled at him, a proud look in her eyes. "You're going to do great things." "I know it," he nodded, still feeling a bit overwhelmed. "I don't know if I'm ready for this. It's so big." "You're ready," she said, her voice steady. "You've always been ready. You just had to believe in yourself." The boy took a deep breath, feeling the weight of her words settle into his heart. He had come so far, and now he had a chance to go even further. It wasn't just a scholarship. It was a new beginning, a chance to prove to himself and to everyone else that he was capable of achieving more than he had ever imagined. The next few days were a blur of excitement and preparation. He had to make decisions that he had never thought he would have to make. The idea of leaving his town, his family, and the life he had always known felt daunting. but he knew this was his chance. He couldn't let fear hold him back now. On the day he was set to leave for the university, the girl came to see him. She was standing in front of his house, a large bag slung over her shoulder, ready to say goodbye. The boy's heart tightened in his chest as he approached her. "You're really going," she said softly, her voice full of both pride and sadness. "I knew you would, but it's still hard to believe." He smiled at her, his heart full of gratitude. "I wouldn't be here without you. You made this possible." She shook her head, her smile soft but sincere. "You did it yourself. You're the one who worked hard. I just believed in you." They stood there for a moment, the weight of the moment hanging in the air between them. It wasn't just about leaving for university. It was about everything they had been through together. The boy had come a long way, and so had she. Their friendship had been the anchor that kept him going, and now it was time for him to take the next step on his own. "I'll miss you," the boy said, his voice thick with emotion. "I'll miss you too," she replied, her eyes shining.
"But I know you're going to do amazing things."
"I'm so proud of you." "Thank you," he said again, his voice breaking slightly. "I'll make you proud." "You already have," she said, her smile bright. "Just keep being yourself." With those final words, she hugged him tightly, and for a moment the boy let himself believe that he was ready for this next chapter. He wasn't alone anymore. He had come so far because of the people who believed in him, and most importantly, because he had started to believe in himself. As he climbed into the car that would take him to the university, he looked back one last time at the small town he had always called home. It felt like a lifetime ago that he had been walking these streets, unsure of his place in the world. Now he was stepping into a new life, a life that held infinite possibilities. The road ahead was unknown, but for the first time, he was excited about what the future held. He had worked hard to get here, and he was ready to keep going. The boy knew that this was just the beginning. The future was wide open, and he was no longer afraid to reach for it. With the scholarship in his hand, the girl's encouragement in his heart, and a sense of hope he had never known before, he was ready to make his dreams come true. And as the car drove off into the distance, he realized that everything he had gone through, every struggle, every challenge, every moment of doubt, had led him to this point. It wasn't just about getting an education. It was about believing in himself, finding his strength, and knowing that no matter where he came from, he could go anywhere. This was his moment, and he was going to make it count.